when looking at this next team, the New England Patriots, I was kind of shocked at how much of a hole they are actually in terms of the money they have, the free agents that they have.
Spent a bag last offseason. That'll do it.
They went 10-7 this past season. They lost to the Bills 17-47. And in reviewing this Patriots team, knowing they lost by this much in the playoffs, I asked myself, is there anything they can do in free agency to shorten up the deficit? And I came away with no. Their free agents, Devin McCourty,
long list,
Trent Brown, Dante Hightower, J.C. Jackson, who just came out and was like, it looks like the Patriots don't want me, Jawan Bentley, Jacoby Myers, Gunnar Olszewski, Jamie Collins, Ted Karras, James White. Just a long list of guys, and I know not all of them are starters like, James White. He's not who he once was. Gunnar Olszewski.
He missed the whole year, right, James White?
Almost. Gunnar Olszewski's not, or he doesn't play receiver, but he's a special teamer. He's a returner. So Jawan Bentley's, up and down. And they have $10.5 million in cap space, which is not a lot to play with. And if you look at their cap casualties, Jonathan Jones they can cut, but I wouldn't because he's a really good corner.
And they're low on corners.
Yeah. If you cut him, they save $6 million. Henry Anderson, I think, is a potential cut.
Jet legend.
Yeah. He saves a $2.5 million. Lawrence Guy $2.5 million. N'Keal Harry $1.2 million. Jojuan Williams $1.4 million. So counting Jonathan Jones, they can hopefully, best case scenario, get to $24 million in cap space. But if they don't release Jonathan Jones, which I wouldn't, they're at $18 million. How are they possibly going to give J.C. Jackson a contract? I just don't think they can do it. And Nelson Aguilar, who had 400 yards last season, is going to get paid $9 million, and they can't release him. They have to eat that money.
That's what happens when you give out all of this bread. The next year, especially when you give bread to these guys who are average, I came into this year saying I don't like the Aguilar-born Jonnu Henry signs. Like the tight ends are decent. They're good. Easy. I like Jonnu more than, but you made Hunter Henry a top 5 paid tight end.
Hunter Henry played pretty well towards the back end of the season.
Jonnu had what,
Mac.
like 200 yards, bro?
Early in the season, it seemed like Jonnu was the guy. But
I want to say
Henry
they gave him like 4 years, $40 million. Like they gave him a pretty decent
amount. A lot of money.
He's a good blocker though.
You're giving $10 million a year to a good blocker who's a tight end. No.
He can catch the ball as well.
No, 100%. They didn't use him.
Yeah,
and they lost McDaniels now too. That's going to have an impact.
Brutal.
I will say it's not as bad. Like Devin McCourty, they have safeties. Kyle Duggar, Adrian Phillips. I think
he's another free agent also.
But McCourty's someone who's
Adrian
Phillips.
Yeah,
he's a big part of that defense.
He re-signed.
Oh, he just re-signed. Okay, cool.
If you look at it, I think Adrian Phillips. Let me just look.
McCourty goes deeper than just play though. He's a veteran leader, been in that team for years. So that's someone they're gonna want to bring back.
Yeah, Adrian Phillips is signed through 2024.
Sweet.
Yeah, so he's good. So they have the safeties in place. Dante Hightower, I'm gonna be honest, he was a great player at one point. He's slow, and I think when you look at the Patriots defense, they're a bit slow. They don't have fast, twitchy guys, especially in coverage, and that's why they get eaten alive, and that's what happened in the Bills game. They need more speed on that defense. It's not as old. I think, frankly, most of these free agents are replaceable outside of J.C. Jackson and Trent Brown. They're all replaceable, so it's not too bad for the Patriots. But I look at their needs. If Trent Brown leaves, right tackle, wide receiver still a need, edge rusher is a need, linebacker is a need. I have some names here. Devondre Campbell just came off a great season with the Packers.
He's going to want a bag.
Yeah, he probably re-signs with Green Bay. Jayon Brown from Tennessee, I think he would be a good pickup.
Dealt with injuries, though. Young, but...
They can use speed, so Quan Alexander, a guy who's been dealing with injuries, can come to New England on not that big of a contract, a prove-it deal type of guy. Very fast, he's a good tackler, good in space. I think he'd be a good addition. Then you look at wide receivers. Allen Robinson, high-end guy. Chris Godwin, high-end guy. Juju, middle of the pack, coming off an injury.
Doesn't fit the Pats culture.
I feel like the Patriots need a slot receiver, and I have two right here that they aren't big names. They probably don't move the needle much, and also I just want to mention Jacoby Myers would be a felt. The loss would be felt, so they have to bring him back too. Two guys are Cedric Wilson,
your guy,
and Jamison Crowder.
Crowder was the name I thought of too.
I think Jamison Crowder, they need a slot. If he can stay healthy, Jamison Crowder is a very good slot. And you pair him up with Kendrick Bourne and
Nelson Aguilar,
Jacoby Myers.
Oh.
I personally don't think Nelson Aguilar starts next year. I don't think he's going to start.
I love seeing the Pats just crumble.
I know that he's getting paid this much,
contracts.
But Nelson Aguilar was one of the worst contracts last offseason. And the fact that the Patriots are going to pay him $9 million to possibly not start next year, because they'd be foolish to let him start next year, is ridiculous. Probably have to draft a receiver. If it was me, I'm drafting Jameson Williams. Coming off that ACL, that's a dynamic number one option for Mac Jones. Right now, it's getting receivers for Mac Jones.
Is he going to be there at 21?
Might be.
He might be. I mean, off a torn ACL, he definitely, there's a big chance he can be.
Because you still have the Eagles still ahead of them, two
Chargers.
picks, and the Chargers. If I'm those 3 picks, I'm concerned that he's off the board.
If I'm the Chargers, I would probably not draft Jameson just off the injuries, because I need somebody to right away.
I would do it because you could wait. You have Herbert and you have Keenan. Like, you could wait a month or like
I agree.
That's fine.
We'll get into the Chargers later on in this episode. At edge rusher, I have Hassan Reddick, Emmanuel Ogbah from Miami, who could be a good addition. I also have Dante Fowler. Dante Fowler, I think, would be an upgrade over what they have now. And draft targets, it's just receiver. Jahan Dotson, Treylon Burks, Jameson Williams, Chris Olave. They just need to bring receivers in for Mac Jones. Yeah. That's it. The defense, I think, with time will figure itself out with Bill Belichick. He'll do his thing.
He finds a way to make him
You
good.
have to find playmakers for Mac Jones.
Yeah, you hit it right on the head. I think while corner is a huge need, especially it looks like J.C. Jackson's going to walk, Bill Belichick found J.C. Jackson and Jonathan Jones. They were both undrafted free agents. So I trust him, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Even though he doesn't have the best track record in terms of the draft over the past few years, I trust Belichick, especially in that corner position, to be able to make it up. And Jalen Mills this past season wasn't terrible as a cornerback too. He allowed 440 total yards on the season. So although it is a need, I'm going to just kind of chalk it up to Belichick's going to figure it out. He's going to be able to get the guys in there to do it. But wide receiver, once again, number one need. You have to find explosive playmakers for Mac Jones to really, bring this offense to a new level, because they plateaued in the season, right? They went on that streak where we all thought, are they arguably the best team in the league, especially when their defense was playing so well? And at one point, they kind of got figured out. I didn't like the signings of Kendrick Bourne and Aguilar last season. They felt like more of Band-Aids to me, who got paid like starting wide receivers for multiple seasons. And it's kind of showing now. While Kendrick Bourne did have a pretty good year, even Nelson Aguilar, paying him $10 million, it's a big cap hit for someone who you don't think is going to start. And to me,
400 yards.
Who's a depth player at best. He's a deep threat, a depth guy who you're just going to kind of, in different formations and packages, you're going to want him in there, but you don't want him starting as your outside wide receiver. Edge, they had only 36 sacks last year, which was 21st in the NFL. Matt Judon was great, had 12.5 sacks on the season, but no one else had more than 5. So you mentioned a couple of their names in that 3-4 scheme, kind of getting an outside linebacker. I love Hassan Reddick. Chandler Jones, probably going to be a little bit outside their price range. Same with Von Miller, who sounds like he wants to go back to LA. LA wants him back as well. Linebacker, we kind of touch on all of these as well, but the number one thing has to be finding a way to get Mac Jones more weapons, really unlock this offense. Have they announced the OC, their new OC yet?
It might be Joe Judge.
I thought he was a quarterback coach.
They said he might be a play caller too.
Interesting. Well, love that as a Jets fan. But yeah, number one on their list has got to be getting wide receivers. I would go out, dabble in free agency. You also got to go into the draft. Jameson Williams seems like a perfect fit for someone who could really, get this offense to go vertical. Even someone who I'm high on, Treylon Burks, another guy, big body receiver. He's possibly going to run the 4.3s, if not the low 4.4s in this in the combine. I think his stock is going to rise over the next couple of months. So number one has to be receiver. They have some other needs, especially on the defense side of the ball, but that's where they got to go.
Before you go, Drew, I want to piggyback off that point about the receivers, and I want to talk about this point with Mac Jones. I want to bring up this point. I like Mac Jones.
Love him.
I've been very high on him since the draft process last season. I love Mac Jones. But he is not going to create out of structure. He is not a playmaker, quote unquote, as a Russell Wilson or a Josh Allen or a Mahomes. You guys know what I mean. Because of that, they need to surround Mac Jones with dynamic playmakers that he just has to give them the ball and they'll create in space. That's it. And I think you hit it right on the nail. Getting a Jameson Williams, despite that ACL injury, would be best case scenario because he's somebody who has wide receiver number one upside. And you pair him up with Kendrick Bourne, they sign a Jameson Crowder or bring back Jacoby Myers. That's a pretty good receiving core with the tight ends they already have established on that team. I think it's good. Also noting that Trent Brown, who's a free agent, said that the funnest he's ever had in his career was playing for the Patriots. So maybe he takes less money playing with them. Maybe he doesn't.
Yeah, he was a year out. He was in the Raiders for a year, and he basically got out of there and went back to New England.
He's a hot commodity, especially at tackle and free agency. So we'll see if he does come back.
And they had one of the better offensive lines this past season after they let one of their best guys in Joe Tooney walk. Yeah. And so it shows how much of an impact. One, Bill Belichick is just one of the best coaches. He can put anyone in position to be successful, but Trent Brown clearly had success in the Patriots before he left, and now after he's left, he's back to form. I look at the wide receiver class, and like you mentioned, this free agents class of wide receivers is going to be one that is either you're spending top dollar or you're scraping the bottom of the barrel. You're not bringing anyone that's really going to move the needle for you. If I'm the Patriots, I go into the draft and I look to bring in a weapon. You mentioned Treylon Burks. I love that name. Garrett Wilson. I don't know if he'll be there. Probably not. There's other teams that need wide receivers that go before them as well. Chris Olave is another name that I look at, and I really like his game as well. I just think that there's money that should go elsewhere for the Patriots right now. Or if anything, they should hold on and wait to spend their money. They're not in a position right now where, yes, they did make the playoffs, but I don't think that they're a championship team. They're a few pieces away, and it's going to take an off season for them to really get it right, maybe 2 off seasons. They need to surround, as you guys have said a plethora of times, I could not agree more. You need to surround Mac Jones with better weapons on the outside. Linebacker, I agree, is another need that I would try to address. Devondre Campbell, I understand that it's going to be a little bit pricey, but you have Judon on the outside. You bring in Devondre Campbell, who really had success with the Packers, put him in the middle to make up for Dante Hightower if he's going to end up walking away. That would be a perfect fit for them. I don't think that his contract is going to be too bad, truthfully. It took him a little bit to really get going. I'm assuming it's going to be around 20 to 30, at 30 at most. So I wouldn't mind you bringing in that guy, especially given the fact of how great he played this past season. You bring him into a system with Bill Belichick being the head coach, leading that defense. He'll definitely be a great force for them. But I really do expect, or I really would like to see the Patriots not go out and try and buy a wide receiver. They tried to do that last offseason, kind of bit them in the butt. But last season's wide receiver class really wasn't that great. Free agent class, excuse me. But I think that their best option here would just be sit at 21, wait and see which players are taken off the board. I do believe a wide receiver like a Jameson Williams, like you mentioned, people are scared, or excuse me, front offices are scared of this torn ACL injury, which is understandable. However, modern medicine has shown us that people can come back from these injuries. A torn ACL is not what it was in 2011, where Derrick Rose wasn't able to come back to form. I think that my timeline's correct. Around those years when Derrick Rose hurt his knee. Jameson Williams, to me, is my favorite receiver in this class. I think whoever gets Jameson Williams is going to get a future superstar. He has that breakaway speed. He has that big play ability. He has great route running. Jameson Williams has everything I want in a wide receiver. I do understand the torn ACL concerns, but with modern medicine, I'm more than fine with the team taking a chance on him, especially the Patriots at 21.
I think the Patriots' problem lies in that, you mentioned it, outside of Matt Judon, they don't have an edge presence. Chase Winovich was a disappointment this past season.
For sure.
You look at Dante Hightower, he can't cover anymore. Devondre Campbell's definitely a coverage linebacker. That's what he's known for the most.
Sure.
Kyle Van Noy stays. He's not good in coverage either. It's just, you look at the Patriots team, it's a very slow team, and they just need to add speed to it. And I think with an addition of a coverage linebacker, getting somebody off the edge, whether, Dante Fowler isn't a great player, but he's definitely fast. He's a speed rusher. It can create a bit more opportunities for the Patriots in that aspect. And Bill Belichick, I mean, he's shown before that he can revive somebody's career, especially defensively.
For sure.
So Dante Fowler, who has all the tools, he was a top 5 pick in the draft. He can flourish in that system. It just depends on him